Our final award for the evening is for outstanding contribution to animal welfare. And here to tell us about the winner, please welcome an Animal Heroes judge and one of the natural world's most vocal and powerful advocates. It's award-winning presenter and campaigner, Nikki Campbell.
Hi. It's my therapy dog. I can't
Lots
tell you.
of treats under there, Nikki. Be careful.
Yeah. It's like, oh, treats. There is. I can't tell you what this boy has done for me.
Oh,
Yes,
pleasure.
absolutely.
I just wanted to get a photo of him up here, which you're taking. It's wonderful to be here. It's a very special evening. And I want to echo, Eduardo is just such an incredible guy. We see those pictures on social media, and we cannot understand how you're in a beautiful place and you see the most beautiful animal, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime, spine-tingling moment. What do you want to do? Stretch for the assault rifle? It's astonishing, isn't it? Absolutely astonishing. And just on elephants, I campaigned very hard with loads of really good people to try and get the ivory ban in this country. And just in the last week, we heard that the British Antiques Association are putting in for judicial review, which is disgraceful. We heard about the poppy farmers earlier on. They were nasty, vile scum. Hang on, the BBC does get into a bit of trouble being impartial, doesn't it? Maybe I should be prudent here. What the hell? I've had a glass of wine. The British Antiques Association are just the same as those poppy farmers. The vile scum. The only difference is they live in Kensington and Chelsea. No, I do love these awards. Heroes everywhere. Mark. I do love these awards so much because there's guys like Mark, there's people like Eduardo, there's people like all of you. We're like-minded. We understand how important animals are to us. And also it reminds us that amidst all the awful cruelty and suffering, there are beacons of hope. People who understand what is happening. People who care. People who remind us what we are fighting for and why. And also people that make us believe that everything will be okay. It is a perpetual struggle, but there is change in the air. There is a certain political dynamic that I think is moving us in the right direction. Well, this man is a giant, ladies and gentlemen. It does not do him justice to call him a mere television presenter. He knows more about animals than pretty much anyone alive. He transcends TV. Now, if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, he basically will have taught you about animals and about nature and about how to live in harmony with the world. He's been our friend and our guide through all the seasons from Springwatch onwards. But above and beyond that, he's used his influence and his popularity to make a real difference with campaigns that really matter. Now, I worked with him briefly when I was a guest on Springwatch, and I've got to tell you, to share his wonder in the natural world was the most extraordinarily enriching experience, and I will never forget it. He stood up as well to the ignorant bullies and the callous killers. He's faced up to the most disgusting, disgraceful intimidation, but his humanity and decency puts those cowards to shame. I love a man who stands up at the National TV Awards and has a go at "I'm a celebrity, get me out of here" for what they do to creatures. I thought that was absolutely magnificent. And so many people in the audience were, oh, I haven't thought of that. And he stands up for what he believes in, for what so many of us believe in here, and he will not stand down. And he's fought for the lives and survival of everything we celebrate tonight. Beautiful animals and their right to share our planet. Let's have a look at the story of Chris Packham.
I promise you, you are going to love it. And if you don't, then I guarantee that your kids will. Because now we're going to take a look at poo. This is great. It's a great little reserve. There's only one thing lacking. Cafe. Red helleborine and glowworm in the same night? The potential is an order of magnitude unknown to naturalists the world over. What a magnificent animal this is. I know I look a complete Bert, but I don't care. Just listen to that.
Chris is a bit like the incredible book-eating boy. He devours information. Everyone who works and meets Chris tends to go away in complete awe of him. They have utter respect of his knowledge, his passion, the way he gets totally involved. He's a real team player.
Chris is passionate about all the world's species, millions of species, and he puts them up there with us. Not many people are able to do that. He's a voice for those creatures that have no voice. His passion for wildlife isn't just a work thing, it imbues his whole life. But he's also very funny. And I have to say, in the 10 years that I worked with Chris, I have never laughed so much in my life.
Growing up with Chris as a child was, well, always fun and entertaining and eventful, and I think probably the word he'd like me to use would be informative. He got me into wildlife by putting jam on my nose to attract wasps, having moth-trapping sleepover birthday parties, which, I mean, granted, my friends thought it might be a bit odd, but, you know, I loved it at the time.
You always say that failure is not an option, and it's not. You have to keep winning, but in order to win, you have to stay alive. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to ask you to look after yourself a little bit more, keep your doctor's appointments, that sort of thing.
He's a formidable campaigner. The things he's done recently have been phenomenal. Things like the People's Walk for Wildlife, the People's Manifesto for Wildlife, all the campaigning he's done in Malta to make us aware of the illegal killing of songbirds, the illegal persecution of birds of prey, grouse moor shooting, all of those things. And the amazing thing about Chris is once he decides to take a campaign on, he just keeps going with it.
I think the best thing about him is he's an expert. He knows his stuff, you know, it's his job. And not just some loudmouth comedian on Twitter.
If it wasn't for Chris, would we care about these things as much? I don't think we would. I'm not sure how he does it. It must be exhausting for him. How does he keep up that level of commitment and constant being in the public eye, fighting for wildlife, while he's trying to combine that with his work?
It's something that I think, unless we have those animals to show young people and excite them, they're not going to be interested in looking after the rest of the animals which are wandering around in the world getting killed by the rest of us.
He's high profile, has a massive platform, so it's great that he uses that to speak out about things that he's passionate about.
Chris's passion for wildlife isn't something that he can in any way choose to turn on and off. He can't partition his life away from it. You know, he lives and breathes it. He absolutely needs it as well. It's where he gets his energy from.
He's funny and charming. He's likeable, which really helps because people want to listen.
I'm sorry, but if we don't stop and actually think and actually act, really act, now, if we don't listen to ecologists rather than economists, if we don't stop voting for ignorant short-termists, then we are very probably doomed. And to paraphrase Crime Watch, do have nightmares, because they might just save us.
He has a brain the size of a planet. He is formidable and fabulous. Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for Chris Packham. Thank you very much. Great job. I give you this? Well, thank you very much. I was going to ask you questions, Chris, but
go on.
Just please do.
No, go on. Go on, fire away if you've got questions.
I was going to say, your love of the natural world is legendary. If you had the opportunity to take out some of those movers and shakers, some of the people who are making the big decisions that run our lives, for one day and show them the wonders that you've seen, what would you show them?
I'd show them the simple things. I'd show them the things that inspired and were so formative to me as a youngster. You don't need lions and polar bears and leaping dolphins. You need a ladybird on the tip of your finger. You need the tadpoles tickling the palm of your hand. You need to watch a cabbage white butterfly metamorphose in a jam jar on your kitchen table. And it's that, you know this, you've done amazing work with young people through your program. It's inspiring those young people through those very simple forms of engagement and connection, which will ignite a passion which will burn for a lifetime and fuel that curiosity to know more and more and to care more and more and then to act increasingly more. I could take them into their own back gardens given an opportunity, and if they had any heart at all, if I could find any heart at all, then maybe I could instill that, And as we know, our broadcasters have done their very best to do that. Sir David is the absolute epitome of that. They spent a lifetime inspiring the world in terms of an awareness and an understanding, a fascination for, an appreciation of the beauty for wildlife. But for all of his work, that remarkable work, for all of the foundation that he's laid, it's now up to us to ensure that, his ongoing legacy, our duty to him and to Richard and all the other heroes that you've seen on this stage is that we change the world. They've done the groundwork. It's up to us now to implement those changes and make sure that all of their efforts and energies and endeavors and skills actually pay the dividends that we require to make this place somewhere where wildlife can prosper and humans can prosper alongside it. It was a long answer, wasn't it? Sorry.
It's a good answer. There's so many millions of species out there, many of which are still undiscovered, almost all of which are facing challenges of our making. How do you choose? How do you choose which cause to champion? How are you choosing your next cause?
I think we have to, at the moment we're using symbolic things. Eduardo with his trophy hunting is highly symbolic. All of the things that we hear about tonight, But behind that we see broader things like veganism. That isn't necessarily symbolic. That's having a far broader and more profound effect. But we require those symbolistic victories because I think that once we gather a few, they'll cause a cascade of others. I think once we get some big wins under our belt, then we'll see the dominoes begin to tumble and a greater awareness of those problems will spread amongst the populace. Because at the moment, we all know that I'm on a stage, you're in the audience, and we're preaching largely the converted. The collective love for wildlife and animals in this room is enough to fuel Los Angeles probably for about 5 weeks. But we have to, dispense that to a wider world that at the moment is pretty much apathetic to the environment and biodiversity. And that's why, moving on to thanks, it's a real privilege to have this award from the Daily Mirror, because amongst the UK's publications, newspaper publications, none can hold a torch to what the Mirror has done in terms of its in terms of the profile that it's giving all of these things, and a personal vote of thanks from my partner, Charlotte, and I from the Wild Heart Trust. Last year, they helped us raise a considerable sum of money so that we could facilitate the rescue of some circus tigers from Europe that were being kept in hideous conditions. But that's a tiny amount of the work that they do, so I'm enormously flattered to receive this award. I will keep the thanks brief, because I've got some work to do. So thank you, obviously, to the judges and to everyone else for giving me this award. I'm sincerely flattered by it. If I'm honest with you, I don't think I'm worthy. I've seen far more worthy people on the stage this evening. Thanks to Charlotte and Megan, they have to shoulder the burden of some pretty extreme reactions to some of my campaigning. I expect it, to be quite honest with you. It goes over my head and only fuels my desire to keep going. But perhaps sometimes, you know, some of the threats that we receive are not quite so palatable for them, so I'm grateful for their patience. Anyway, on to the work. The important bit. So since I've been here this evening, I have been working. I've been sending emails because, but it's just the way it goes. So last Friday, I was given an assurance by the Department of Transport following a legal action with some very fine lawyers at Lee Day, who I'm working closely with, that the enabling works for HS2 would not take place with any advance warning. The enabling works are potentially the felling of some of 108 ancient woodlands on the route of that railway track. And this morning, I was horrified to see that they'd immediately broken their promise, because contractors turned up at one of the most important sites with the intention of felling ancient oak trees. So my email that I was typing this evening was to my lawyers, and at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, they will receive another letter from me, the Department of Transport, threatening even more severe legal action if any of those contractors try and pursue any more of this extraordinarily destructive work.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Packham.